Hello all, I'm Sai and in today's video I'm bringing to you my March reading wrap-up. March was kind of a mixed reading month for me. I managed reading a total of 12 books, of which 8 are physical books and 4 are audiobooks. I decided to get back into audiobooks from March because I got a great deal on Storytel. I thought of sharing it with you guys, but by the time I availed the offer itself, it just ended super quickly. So I'll probably be listening to a lot more audiobooks also from now on. And another added thing which I'm very happy to say is that I managed reading 3 Tamil books in March itself. So I'll be including a lot more Tamil books in the future also in my videos. By the time this video is published, already one Tamil book review is published in the channel. I'll link it in the description. Please do check it out if you're interested. And I'm also planning to make more Tamil videos in the future, especially for Tamil books. It is not going to affect my English videos in any way, so you need not worry about that. I'll talk about the Tamil books alone at last inside the video. So without any further ado, let's get into the books right away. Let's start with the physical books as usual. The first physical book which I managed to finish in March is part of a series, and it is also a short story collection, which is Sword of Destiny by Andrez Sapkowski, which is the second set of short stories inside the Witcher series. Now after reading these 2 short story collections, we can go forward and read all the 5 books inside the main series just as such. So I'm very much interested to get into the main part of the series right now. Keeping that aside, I should say that this short story collection was also really good. Okay, in my review for the first book itself, I have mentioned that nearly 3/4 of the short stories from the first collection are episodes inside the first season of the Witcher show. And after reading this one, I can easily say that both of these books together comprise the first season of the Witcher series on Netflix. This one was just as fun to read, and trust me, it's a very grimdark series, but the way in which the author writes it with a lot of humor and banter between the characters makes it so much fun to read. I'm definitely loving the vibe of the series, excluding some of the things that are done with women alone inside it, because it seems a bit too objectifying if you ask me. I know so many other people also do not like that aspect of the series, even though it is a good series as a whole. I definitely enjoyed this one and I'll be continuing on with the series for sure, and I rated this one 4.5 stars. After reading that fantasy book, I wanted to read something which is low-key and contemporary in its tone. So I went forward and picked up this book, even though I knew that it is kind of sad in its tone. And it is The Last Family in England by Haig, in which we see the story of a family in England, but it is not from the point of view of any human being. It is totally narrated only from the point of view of the dog inside the family, and it is basically how dogs see us human beings inside this world, keeping the dogs as the main characters and whom they are interacting with as the side characters throughout. It is quite a sad story, so if you are someone who does not like books which will bring down your mood, I suggest you to not go forward and try this one. The only reason why I bought this book itself is because it had a dog on the cover, and I've also liked Matt Haig's books before this one. This is one of his older works, I think from the early 2000s, and we can clearly see the difference between how he writes now and how he used to write back then. I'm not saying that it's bad in any way, but I'm just making it clear that his books nowadays are much better than these. It is not a bad book, but a sad book, and I ended up rating this one 3 stars, which brought down my reading for the month a little bit. Next we have an adult fantasy book, which is kind of the last book inside the series that have been published so far, and it is A Coat of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. It is a huge book, okay? I think I took almost 1 whole week to finish this one itself, and it was not satisfying, okay? In this book, we follow Cassian and Nesta's story, because Feyre's story ends with A Coat of Frost and Starlight. I should say that I liked the first 3 books inside the series so much. The 4th book was kind of not necessary if you ask me. And this one, which is the latest installment inside the series, is definitely my least favorite of all. The main reason behind that is I did not like the main character whom we are following here. And I've also decided not to continue on with the series if it is going to have only Nesta as the main character. If we move away from Nesta and explore some of the other characters who are even more important for the world as a whole, I think I will continue on with the series. But Nesta does not interest me in any way. Cassian is okay, but Nesta definitely is not my favorite character, especially after reading this book. It just felt a bit too smutty for my taste, and more than romance, I can say that this was a book that focused a lot more on lust. I'm not saying that it is wrong, but it is just not something I gravitate towards to the extent which it concentrates on inside the book. So I rated this one 3 stars, and it kind of put me in a slump. Next we have the best book that I read in March, okay? I did not have any plans to read this book. I was just going back and watching my first quarter TBR video, and I saw that this was the only book which I hadn't started yet for a TBR. The other books I've either finished reading or at least given a chance, but this one I did not even go forward and pick up because of very obvious reasons. Once I reveal the book itself, you'll be able to understand why it is, and trust me, this book did not disappoint me at all, okay? And it is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. Now reading this book was a whole different level of a journey for me. I have a complete spoiler-free review of this one coming up really soon in the channel. It is already filmed, edited and uploaded. I'm just waiting for the wrap-up to be published first so that it does not get delayed further on because of the other videos. So you'll be seeing my review of A Little Life very soon. And it will be totally spoiler free. In that video, I'll basically talk about what all you have to keep in mind if you're going to read A Little Life, because it is one of the most triggering books that I've read. And it is also the book which has traumatized me the most because it is a super sad story and it is also deeply traumatizing. If you are someone who's weak of heart, I'd suggest you to not pick this book up without doing a lot of research about it. It is kind of a sad book which will just pull you and suck you in, and by the end of the book you will feel broken if you're not ready for what you're going to experience. I gave myself all the time that I needed, but I also ended up finishing like 500 pages of the book in just 2 days itself, because I knew that if I took longer to finish the book, I'll not end up finishing it because of the amount of strength that the story has. It is such an intense, extreme story about this person named Jude and his 3 friends. It basically does not have any plot. It is just an exploration of these characters, especially the main character Jude, and what all he has gone through in life. Easily one of the best books that I've read ever in my life, and I want to reread this sometime in the future. Not anytime soon at all. I will read it in like 1 or 2 years down the line or so, and I will again take as much time as I want to read this book, because no matter how much you know about this story, there is something which will get into your heart and break it for some reason by something that the author does. It is easily a masterpiece, and even if you don't want to read this book, I totally get it. You don't have to, but if you really want to read it and if you are planning to read it, I suggest you to do as much research as you can. Make yourself ready, take care of yourself, and then read it, because this is one book which can make a person easily slip into depression because of the content it has. And I ended up rating this one 4.5 out of 5 stars. The next one is the first book inside an Indian-based YA fantasy duology, and it is Empire of Sand by Tasha Suri. This was one book which I had really high expectations for, and I should say that it was quite good. It was not out of the world and excellent in any way, but it was really good and entertaining if you ask me. It is very easy to follow because there are not that many plots. It is quite straightforward in its tone. Here we follow our main character Meher, who's living in this huge kingdom called Amba. And the thing about Meher is that she is half human and half Amriti, who are a kind of people that have a mix of both human as well as kind of godlike creatures' blood. Because of this reason, there are a lot of things that are happening in Meher's life, and she is married off because of various things that happen. As we progress on with the story, many things about the world are revealed to us, and how Meher as well as the people who are helping her are going to cope with it and deal with all the circumstances is the plot of the book. I cannot say that it was underwhelming, but it was not as good as I wanted it to be too. I have not finished reading the second book though, so we'll have to wait and see how it is going to be. I'll make sure to read it in the first few days of April itself so that I have this one fresh in my memory, and I ended up rating this one 4 stars. Next we have the only non-fiction book which I read in March, and I'm also glad that I finished at least reading this one, because I've been meaning to read this for quite a while now, and I have been putting it off for so many reasons just because I did not want to feel uncomfortable while reading it. And it is also one book which is very necessary for everyone, no matter who we are, and it is Let's Talk Money by Monika Halan, which is an Indian-based personal finance book. And I can also say that this is the only personal finance book that I've read so far which I've got the most information out of to put in a very practical way into the world. The author has also written another book just solely dedicated for mutual funds alone. I think it was published last year, so I'll definitely be picking that up really soon because I got so much information out of this one. You can just see the amount of tabs that I've put in here, right? I have learned a lot about finances after reading this book and how we can increase our money, how we can plan for our future despite the threat of inflation, and how not just saving money can help us live the life that we want to in the future. It is such an informative book, and I personally think if you're someone who's starting on with your career right now, this is one book you need to read. I personally wish that I had read this book 2 to 3 years back while it was released itself, because I think my finances would be far better than they are right now. I'm not suggesting to read this if you're in college or school because it might be a bit too much for that age. But if you have started working and if you want to multiply your money, you definitely need to try this book, and I rated this one also 4.5 stars. Next, we have my book club pick, which is Cilka's Journey by Heather Morris. That is the second book or companion book to The Tattooist of Auschwitz, which was my first book that we read for my book club last year, and it also ended up being my most favorite book from last year. Now, technically, I have not finished reading this book yet. I've got like 100 pages or so of the book, and I'll be finishing it today when I'm filming the video. So by the time you're watching the video, I would have finished reading the book. And in this book, we basically follow Cilka, who's one of the side characters from the Tattooist of Auschwitz. In that book itself, we see what all stuff Cilka is going through just because she has to survive, and also she has to help some of the people around her. There are so many things that Cilka does in a very selfless way so that she can help the ones that she loves inside the concentration camp in Auschwitz in that book. And what happens to Cilka after, the things that happen in Tattooist of Auschwitz come to an end. This one feels just as, saddening as the Tattooist of Auschwitz, and I can see myself rating this one also 5 stars very easily because just 75% into the book itself, I can see that this is going to be one book which I'll not be able to forget in my life. So by far, I'm just liking it so much, just like I like the Tattooist of Auschwitz. And it will probably end up being a 5-star too. Please do wait and watch out for my book club review and discussion video, which will be out just in a couple of weeks or so. So this is the last English physical book which I read in March. Moving on to the audiobooks. First, I listened to a short story collection, which is again another part of a series, and it is Tales of the Celestial Kingdom by Lynn Tan, which is the third book or collection of short stories after the Celestial Kingdom duology. I listened to this series last year also as audiobooks in the beginning of the year, and I should say that it was pretty decent for a new adult fantasy duology. Now, if you ask me, this collection of short stories was not that much interesting for me because it had kind of a shattered timeline where some of the short stories happened before the beginning of the first book, some happen in between the first and second books, some happen after the second book, and so on. And also, it's been quite a while since I finished reading the series. It's been over a year, so it is not that fresh in my memory too. Because of all these reasons, I should say that this was not that much engaging for me, even though it's mostly my fault, and I ended up rating it 3 stars. Next, I read a novella, which is by one of the most popular fantasy authors right now for the past 1 or 1.5 years on YouTube, and it is What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. Now, this is not the first Kingfisher book that I'm reading, okay? I actually tried listening to Nettle and Bone as an audiobook last year, and for some reason it did not work out for me, so I DNF'd the book back then. And in December, I started listening to The Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking, which I just thoroughly enjoyed, okay? I was just halfway through the book, and by the time I finished that itself, half of the month of December got ended. And I wanted to close my reading on December 15th in order to do some of the videos for the end of the year, so I just DNF'd that book softly back then. I'm very, very sure that I'm going to go forward and restart and listen to that audiobook and finish it this year because I loved this one so much, okay? In this one, we basically follow this soldier, and if I'm not wrong, the soldier is a trans man. Okay, I can be totally wrong based on my understanding, but just talking from what I got as an essence from the story, okay? It was really, really, really nice. It's basically like a horror fantasy, but the way in which the author writes it is so atmospheric, very easy to read, and it is also super funny, okay? Take really dark storylines and characters who have been through like shit, who are living basically in a very dark world, and narrate it to us in a very, darkly humorous way. I just enjoyed that one so much about this book. Now, the soldier is the main character whom we follow here, named Alex, and after they have served their time in the army and been through wars which have traumatized them very deeply, they just go forward and meet a friend because they got some kind of message to go on meet them. And once they meet their friend, so many things start happening. Even for an audiobook, it is very short. I think it's just 4 hours long, and trust me, I had so much fun listening to it. I think I finished it in one sitting because it was something which I could not stop listening to. I also wanted to finish the sequel for this one, which is What Feasts at Night, but because of some reasons, I could not pick it up in March itself, so I'll definitely be picking it up in April. I'm not sure whether this is a duology or an ongoing series, but I'm all in for it because I just loved this first book and I rated it 4 stars. Now I want to talk about the Tamil books which I read. Even though they are Tamil books, I'm going to talk about them in English for the sake of this video, and I'll have separate videos for all the 3 books that I'm going to talk about really soon. One is already published, it will be linked in the description. Another one will be published this week, and the other will be published a bit further into the month. So the first one which I finished is an audiobook, and it is iniya, iyandhira by Sujatha. Now, Sujatha is one of the most well-known authors in Tamil literature, and this is basically a futuristic sci-fi book that was published in 1980, and the story happens in 2021. And the entire story happens in Chennai. I have a dedicated review for the book. Please do go forward and check it out. It is fully in Tamil. And if you are someone who is craving to read a sci-fi book that happens in Chennai, that too in Tamil, then you have to read this book. I'm not going to give away a lot about this inside this video so that, I don't spoil it much for you. It is available in the Storytel app, and it is also just around 5 hours or so in listening time. It was very enjoyable for me, even though the ending was not that great personally for me. So I ended up rating this one 4 stars. The next one is also an audiobook, and it is Abaaya, Malli by Indra Soundarrajan. This is the first book that I read by the author, and it is kind of a supernatural thriller if you ask me. It is more supernatural than thrilling, and I just enjoyed the vibe of the book so much. Here we follow this couple who have been married to each other because of some things that the man's elder sister and the woman's father have done in terms of occult practices. And once they get to know about this, they want to talk about this to the woman's lover before she got married, and how these three people go forward and resolve the mystery that has happened, and all the supernatural elements that are tied into it is the actual plot of the story. Again, I have the video for this one already uploaded in the channel. It will be published this week. So if you want to know more about the book, please do watch out for that video. It is also in Tamil. I rated this one also 4 stars. So after finishing those 2 Tamil books, I was having such a great time. So I wanted to just put a pause on it and not jinx it for myself. And out of nowhere, what happened is, my mother usually goes to the library and picks up some Tamil books for herself to read once in 2 weeks or so. And after I finished reading Abaaya malli, she had this one in hand, which is Kaatraai, varuven, which is also by the same author. So I went forward and picked it up as the physical copy, listened to the audiobook, and continued on following with the physical book since it was available for free to me to read. So I just went forward and started reading it. I should say that this was much more fun and elaborate compared to Abaaya malli. Again, this is kind of a supernatural thriller book, and this one is more thrilling compared to being supernatural. Here we follow this photographer named Babu, who gets this kid to go forward and take photos for this function that is happening in a huge palace. And once he goes and takes photos there's this smoky image that gets on keeping recorded in all his photos. It is revealed to them that smoky image is actually a ghost, and whose ghost it is, why it is doing all these things, and there are also some deaths that occur inside the book, the mysteries behind the deaths, the reasons behind the deaths, and how all these are connected to this ghost is together narrated by the author in this as the plot. Again, I did not like the ending of this book so much because it felt too practical to be a supernatural thriller. Still, I enjoyed it and I rated this one also 4 stars. I have not filmed the review for this one yet, but the Tamil video for this one will also be coming out in the channel pretty soon. So yes guys, those are all the 12 books which I managed to finish reading in March. Don't forget to let me know your March wrap up in the comments below, because I'd like to know what you read and get some recommendations from you guys. And if you've read any of the books that I've talked about in this video, or if you're interested in reading any of them, please do let me know that also in the comments. And if you did enjoy watching today's video and found it helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and also share it to your friends. If you want to get more content from me, do subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching and have a great rest of your day.